Ja.
Ja.
Here he is. There he is.
The tech person has the tech problems.
Yeah.
We all
expecting that. Can happen to everyone. All right, we start over like we just pick up now. Okay.
Okay.
Gadgets. Worden we er niet allemaal blij van? Een mooi stukje techniek op de fiets draagt bij aan het plezier tijdens de rit. Waar ga je naartoe om tot in de diepste details van de gear te duiken? Juist, dcrainmaker.com. Vanavond gaan we de keer van 2020 bespreken. Bekijken we naar de flops en blikken we vooruit naar de technologie van volgend jaar. Welkom bij aflevering 16 van HetisKoers TV met Rainmaker van dcrainmaker.com.
Uit de rijk gevulde schatkamer van de wielersport mag HetisKoers TV zo nu en dan een greep doen. De pareltjes die wij daar opduiken presenteren wij u hier. Welkom bij HetisKoers TV. Hier zijn uw gastheren Maarten Visser en Bastiaan Gaillard.
Hey Bastiaan.
Hey Maarten.
Daar zijn we weer.
Daar zijn we weer, jongen. Ben je er klaar voor?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yes, I'm ready. Ja, dat wordt een spannende show dit, hè?
Dat wordt een zeer spannende show. Ja, want we gaan straks met DC Rainmaker spreken, met Rainmaker. De tech special, of de tech specialist van YouTube eigenlijk. En die gaat ons meenemen in wat zaken omtrent de top 5 van het afgelopen jaar. En misschien ook wel een flop. En wat voorspellingen voor het komende jaar. Dus dat wordt wel best wel spannend, omdat het in het Engels is.
Ja, zeker.
Dat vooral. Ja.
Dat gaat wel goed komen. Joh. We slepen elkaar erheen, toch?
Dat denk ik wel. Op zijn steenkolen Engels, Louis van Gaals. Dan moet het zeker lukken.
Als Louis kan, dan kunnen wij het zeker, joh.
Ja, heb jij nog wat gedaan de afgelopen week? Heb je nog een beetje gefietst of heb je nog wat leuke dingen gedaan?
Nee, het valt wel tegen. Een beetje gezwift eigenlijk, verder geen gekke dingen. Maar ik ben wel bezig om een soort Festive 500 te plannen dit keer. Tussen kerst en oud en nieuw. Dus daar ben ik een beetje voor aan het kijken. Routes bedenken. Wel Zwift, geen Zwift. Wel gravel, geen gravel. Dus afhankelijk van het weer uiteraard. Maar dat is wel waar ik een beetje mee bezig ben op het moment. En jij dan?
Nou, ik ben eigenlijk vrij weinig aan het plannen. Ik ben vooral aan het trainen voor de ride.
Oh.
Ik heb gisterochtend... kijk, achter mij kun je het zien, hè. Ik rijd met enige regelmaat op Zwift en dan probeer ik daar een beetje fit op te blijven. En tijdens de coronaperiode was het vrij lastig om veel buiten te fietsen, hè, zeker in het begin. Dus ik heb ook in de zomerperiode nog wel aardig wat uurtjes binnen gezeten. Maar gisteren dacht ik, het is mistig. Ik ga gewoon naar buiten, ik ga het gewoon eens proberen. Het was lekker, niet al te veel wind, dus ik denk, ik ga gewoon. Ja. Ik vertrok denk ik rond 9:30 met een graad of 4. En toen ik terugkwam, 1,5 uur later, of 1 uur en 40 minuten later, toen voelde ik mijn vingers niet meer en mijn tenen niet meer. En had ik ijs op de helm staan. Het was zo koud, dat ik dacht van, ik verlang naar mijn zoldertje. Maar als ik buiten ga fietsen, Bastiaan, het is zo koud, dan weet je één ding. Je vingers gaan doorsteken, toch?
Ja.
Hoe vaak gebeurt dat tijdens zo'n ritje?
Geen idee.
1 keer toch maar?
Is dat zo?
Ja, ik weet gewoon, ik moet er een keertje doorheen. En dan, je weet, het gaat zeer doen, ze gaan steken en dan is het klaar.
Ja.
Maar had
je wel handschoenen aan?
Ja, ik had handschoenen aan. Ja, Oké, het waren van die voorjaar-najaar handschoentjes. Ze waren gewoon te dun. Maar iedere keer als ik mijn positie veranderde op het stuur, op de grill, op de fiets van de show, dan had ik hem of bovenop, dan was ik even gewend. Even steken, dan pakte ik onder in de beugel, en dan wilde ik aan de rem zitten, schakelde ik, dan was het weer koud. En dan, jongen, dat was echt verschrikkelijk. Ja. Ik moet daar wel even wat op gaan verzinnen, want het is lang geleden dat ik in zoveel kou heb gefietst.
Ik denk gewoon een goede handschoentjes aanschaffen, dat scheelt al de helft.
Ja. En
ik ken nog een kledingmerk.
Ik ken er ook al meerdere. Ja. En weet je nog dat ik laatst een nieuwe rubriek in het leven wilde roepen? Dat gaan we binnenkort ook doen. Ja. Maar dat begon een beetje met een frustratie. Mijn frustratie was, ik heb fietsoverschoenen, die wou ik aantrekken. Dat waren van hele strakke dingetjes. En ik had zo'n ruzie mee. Ik zat er maar mee te worstelen en het lukte niet. En het zweet breekt uit. Ja. Dan maakte ik een fotootje van de post. En toen zei Joris Knapen, die zegt, je moet misschien eerst die overschoentjes aantrekken. en dan vervolgens de schoenen en dan trekken ze zo overheen. Nou, dat gedaan, dacht ik, ja, natuurlijk, logisch. Het werkt ook. Alleen, volgend probleem, dat kan dus niet. Je kunt ze niet uitdoen als je vingers half bevroren zijn.
Oh, nee. Nee. Ja, mijn oplossing is vrij simpel en ook vrij prijzig. Hè. Ik heb van die winterboots, zeg maar. Die halfhoge, echt van die winter geïsoleerde schoenen. Dat is echt top, jongen. Dat kan ik iedereen aanraden als je veel buiten fietst in de winter.
Oké. Nou, dan moet ik dat maar eens overwegen nou. Want ik wil toch in de winter ook wel een beetje blijven gravelen. Dus,
we hebben natuurlijk die special gemaakt met Bike Shoe for You. Misschien daar staan ze sowieso. Van Leek is het. Het is echt een topschoen.
Ja. Oké, nou ga ik in de gaten houden. Zullen wij zo doorgaan naar onze gast? Heb jij iets met gadgets trouwens?
Ja, ik vind het altijd mooi, jongen. Ik heb graag nieuwste telefoontjes. Ik kijk graag naar mooie MacBooks, leuke camera's. Maar ja, dat geldt ook voor op de fietsen. Dus een fijne fietscomputer, achterlampjes. Het kan maar eigenlijk niet gek genoeg. Ik vind het cool. Ja, jij dan?
Ja, ik ben ook wel een gadget freak en ik hou er ook wel van. Ik heb toevallig vandaag, sorry, het is echt zo. Ik heb vandaag weer een pakketje binnengekregen. Ik ga hem niet live unboxen, want we zijn niet live natuurlijk. Nee. Maar ik heb hem al wel eventjes opengemaakt, het doosje. Ik kreeg een pakketje van Tim, namelijk de Wahoo Rival, het nieuwe horloge. Die ga ik even testen.
Mooi, ja.
En ik weet dat Ray daar ook al een keer het een en ander over heeft gezegd. Zelfs nog een special over de horloges van 2020. Dus dan gaan we straks ook maar even naar vragen van wat heeft hij al ervaren en waar moet ik op gaan letten. Ja. Ik denk dat het tijd is om te gaan beginnen met Ray. Zullen we eens beginnen met een proper introduction, om het zo maar te zeggen? Ja.
Hey folks, Ray from DCRainmaker.com here.
Hi Ray, very warm welcome to our HetisKoers show. It's a big honor to have you. How are you doing?
Good, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm excited to chat a bit of tech.
Bit of tech, with two Dutchies.
With two Dutchies, we've already been chatting tech beforehand, so now it's just continuation of more tech. Just tech instead.
That's true. Before we start, we always have one question, and the question is based on a question attached to the tea bags you have in Holland.
Okay.
Do you recognize it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we call this a Pickwick moment.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys get sponsored dollars?
No, we're not sponsored by Pickwick. No, we just like it. Not yet. Pickwick, if you're watching. But we also have a very nice bumper. It's very old. It's very nostalgic.
Het heeft zoveel charme en toch lijkt hij zo gewoon.
Yes, our tea moment. The question is, and I'll translate it in English, which song brings back special memories?
Oh, wow. Not the tea song. Holy cow. I don't know. I think as a father with 3 little kids right now, it's probably just Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, because that's all you're singing every night. Trying to get some kids to bed. That's probably the worst answer everywhere, anywhere, anytime. But that's I think all the songs I get these days. Is that or some sort of kids, toddler sing-along thing.
I'm glad you didn't mention the Baby Shark song. So.
Oh no, that's not good. That's not good. That's special, right? Not the right kind of special.
No. Okay. So, Ray, we're Dutch. Where are you from?
Originally from Seattle, so in the U.S., and then I moved to Washington, D.C., and that's where the name DC Rainmaker comes from, is that I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and my name is Rainmaker. So it was just a combination of all that together.
Okay.
Cool. And then you moved to Paris, right?
Yep, and then I moved to Paris almost 10 years ago now. It seems crazy. And then lived there for 6 or so years, 6.5, something like that. And then moved up here, I guess, almost 3 years ago next month, which again does not seem like it's just blown by. It's been, so I've been kind of all over the place, but really enjoying it here. It's great living in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands in general. We just love the cycling culture of it all. There's the cycling culture that is displayed in the back of your background images right there, and then there's like the Dutch cycling culture, which is just a whole different realm of, the whole day-to-day aspect of it that I think I enjoy even more than anything.
Yeah, you upload sometimes pictures from Amsterdam with a lot of cyclists, just commuters on the road. That is that something strange for you?
I think it's more interesting, and it still hasn't got old to me, even I guess 3 years later. I think like even every day commuting, dropping off the kids in around town and stuff like that for school, and it's just the number of bikes is still amazing to me 3 years later. And just the efficiency of it. And I think even more than that, like some of the maneuvering that you see out there on the road of cyclists that you're like, oh, someone's about to just, get like a knockdown, drag out fight. And it's just nothing, like people cutting each other off, and it's just a totally normal thing. And I think like in Instagram and stuff, that's something that outside of here, the rest of the world doesn't understand, right? The rest of the world doesn't understand the sheer volume of bikes every single day, and it's just a normal part of life. Like we don't have a car, we have lots of bikes, but no car. It's just that's our life.
Oh yeah, cool. And you are you're of course you're a gadget guru, a tech guru, but how would you describe your daily job?
That is my daily job, in a sense that it's gadgets and stuff all day long now. So I used to work at Microsoft for 12 years or something like that, and then I left about 4 or so years ago to make this my full-time job now. So my full-time job is I always say like I got to be a professional athlete without being fast. I literally get to test things every day, and I get to bike or run or swim or whatever the heck it is as my job. So it's fun.
Yeah, is it also fun when you have to test a new watch like the Rival in cold water in Amsterdam?
I've got one here. Just came in today.
Yeah.
I saw your review.
Yeah. That was some very cold swims, and the kicker is people are still out there swimming. Like even on a day like today, barely freezing, below freezing, I think it started off, and people are swimming every day, and most of them not in wetsuits. Like I'm impressed, but I don't necessarily understand that element of the Dutch culture yet of going out and jumping into an incredibly cold body of water every day for the fun of it.
But then we are on the same page, because I don't understand it as well.
We have one Iceman. There's also our ice guru. Do you know Wim Hof?
No.
You should Google him.
You should really look into that.
He steps into to cold baths full with ice cubes. It's crazy stuff. He went barefoot to Mount Everest, I guess, running up. Crazy stuff.
No, he's trying to prove that everybody makes brown fat, and it keeps you fit, and you can make extra brown fat to go into cold conditions and then stay healthier. That's what he does, and does meditation and stuff. So maybe all those people swimming without wetsuits are part of the Wim Hof training program. I don't know.
Apparently. I will not be joining that training program. I'm going to stay with my wetsuit.
No. Me neither. So before we talk about the rest of the tech, I just said I got this watch today. I saw a review of you, and you were not really accelerated about what you found in the box.
Yeah, it's tough. I think Wahoo's future in wearables is bright long term. I think short term, it's definitely a very unfinished kind of beta-like product. So it's not really competitive yet. I think Wahoo is a company that's shown they can change the marketplace dramatically. If we went back 8 years ago now or so, they introduced the Wahoo Kicker. And at the time, that was an era when CompuTrainer and brands like that were everything. And Tax was in there as well with trainers. And, Wahoo entered that scene into the indoor training space with nothing. I mean, they were literally, before becoming a fitness company, the owner of it made docks, the same docks you go swimming on. They make floating docks. And then he pivoted and did stuff in this, iPhone realm a little bit for sports tech, and eventually the Kicker. And now if we fast forward, 8 years later, CompuTrainer is out of business because of Wahoo, like single-handedly because of Wahoo. And so if we look at Wahoo again, they're getting into this kind of new market of wearables, and I think today it's probably not necessarily the best option on the market, but I think if we go down a year from now or 2 years from now, then I think they will be very, very competitive. And Wahoo has shown over the years that for the most part, all their units get upgraded with software and things like that, similar like an Apple model. So, the unit that you picked up today, while it may be a little bit unpolished today, a year from now, that same unit will be dramatically different than today. So,
lots of firmware updates coming.
Yep. Yeah, they showed that with their Element series. Their Element started kind of in the same way, 3 or 4 years ago now, and now it's a dramatically different product than it was then.
And what would
good.
you?
It's good for consumers in the competition.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What would you like to see on the new arrival? What's one spec you say that has to be in it?
I think it's a little bit of death by a thousand cuts. There's so many things. I think on the sports side, accuracy is one of those that's just tough. Both heart rate accuracy, optical heart rate is tough, but also GPS. I've been using it for all my workouts actually the last I guess month and a half now, something like that. And even workouts yesterday, accuracy wise, it's still not comparable to other things on the market. And I think beyond that, a lot of just the general smartwatch features that you would come to expect. So like 24/7 heart rate to be able to see a resting heart rate and things like that. You can see elements of that on the watch, but none of that shows up on your phone, for example, or so that kind of stuff that it's not really there yet. I think especially on the non-sport stuff like step tracking and stuff like that, where it's just incredibly sleep tracking. Yeah, there's so many things that are very, very basic that even TomTom watch from 7 years ago had. So it's kind of tough.
Okay, but they can manage that by doing some firmware upgrades and implementing new stuff.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's something that Wahoo has shown they can do, and they understand, and they certainly have the money behind the company to do that. Whether or not they have enough developers to pull that off is probably questionable. But again, I think give them a year or two, and it's going to be a dramatically different watch than it is today.
Okay, but then they had to think about that hardware wise, the watch has to be future proof, because if you have new features, then your hardware has to deal with it.
Yep, and that's a bit of a challenge for them. So I think from a base sports standpoint, that hardware is totally capable of doing that. I suspect the optical heart rate sensor is probably the limits of what that optical heart rate sensor can do physically, hardware-wise. They're going to be able to do some algorithm stuff to improve it a little bit, but eventually you get to the point of that may not be a great optical heart rate sensor package. But one of their bigger challenges will be that they don't have the capacity on that watch for things like music storage or contactless payments or those sort of things that admittedly not everyone wants. A lot of people just want a sport watch for sports and they want something else for something else. But I think overall globally, the wearables market has kind of shown that people want one watch to rule them all. And certainly we've seen Garmin succeed in that realm as well. So I think this watch has the hardware to do a lot of stuff sport-wise for the next few years, but beyond that, it's a little bit more tricky.
And can you tell us something about when you test stuff and you do reviews? Do you give companies advice, or is it just your review?
Definitely, yeah.
It's of course very a lot of text and a lot of information, but you give them something back as well.
Definitely, I kind of say that when a company sees its review or my review of their product, they shouldn't be surprised. Meaning that when they read that and they open up the page the first time, they may disagree with how I phrase something or the humor I use. They might not find as funny as I do, but they shouldn't be surprised with the technical details of what I'm saying, because with the vast majority of the time I'm asking questions during the review cycle. I'm saying, hey, this doesn't seem right. Why is this not working this way? Or this over here I'm having a problem with. Can you help me fix it? Because I want to understand when maybe I've done something wrong, right? Maybe it's something that I did that caused some issues. I think a good example of that was actually this past week with the Hammerhead Karoo 2 cycling GPS that just came out, where I had some issues last week on a ride that ultimately ended up the ride stopped recording halfway through the ride. And so I wanted to understand what went wrong there. And, we had a big conference call about it with people all around the world and all this sort of stuff to kind of walk through step by step. I had screen recording of the whole thing so I could actually play back like a black box what happened during the ride. And it came down to a combination of some things that were partly my fault and some things that were their fault. And then it all kind of like occurred at the same time. And that's something I think is valuable when I go to review something that I could have written a review that said, this product sucked because, it crashed mid-ride or whatever the case was. That wouldn't have been accurate. And I think what was more accurate was being able to kind of show both sides of that, hey, this part here was my bad because I had something wrong on my Strava route. But the way that product handled that particular aspect of it ultimately ended up with me having a ride end midway through. And so that's something that was a good combination. And I think they've shown that in the case of Hammerhead and in most companies, I think in general, they're very willing to listen to that feedback. And, they may not be always able to fix it or change it. They may not agree with it, but at least listen to it and understand it. And then more importantly, I think for readers, for me to be able to understand their perspective, right? So why did they do something the way they did? And I think from my engineering background or whatever you want to call IT background, companies always do things for a reason. It's not because they hate us and want to make our lives miserable. It's because there's usually a technical reason or maybe a business reason or something else why they did something. So I want to explain that. And again, I may not agree with it, and you as a consumer may not agree with the answer either, but at least to give them the opportunity to say, hey, we did this way because of this, and that's the case.
Because we want to update and we want to release more features and you have to pay and stuff like that. Perhaps. Okay. Yeah.
There's always a reason. So I like to at least give them their chance to give that reason. And then also give them that private feedback. So in many cases, companies, I think virtually every company out there that I review, I'm giving feedback before products are announced. And, if they can fix that feature or fix that issue before release, then, in my mind, I'm not going to talk about things that were fixed before it's released. That's silly.
Okay.
I want to talk about things that's the same product that you would get. And so I think it helps everyone in that case.
Yeah. But your reviews are very thorough. And are there not some companies that try to require your services? They want to give you a job? Do you get asked a lot, or?
I used to get asked a lot. I think people know now that I don't take any money from companies. I don't take the companies I review. So none of that stuff. I don't keep the products that are sent to me. I send them back and get them back to the companies. And so I think these days, every company that interfaces with me understands that, but certainly every once in a while you get companies that may not be as familiar with what I do, that try that, but that's just not my kind of thing, I guess.
Okay.
And did companies in the past try to stop you from publishing the review?
I think I've only had one company that got really upset, really upset, and they threatened to sue me and all these sort of things. And
we want names, Ray. We want names. Fill it out.
that power meter company from Scotland has since gone out of business. So it's last laugh. I find that in general, it's funny. I think the companies that many companies get bad reviews. Wahoo got arguably a bad review on the Wahoo Rival. I don't think people would say that was a good review. Garmin gets bad reviews. Tax got I would say, somewhat bad review of the unit yesterday, for example. But I think almost every time I talk to those companies, someone from Wahoo kind of emailed me on the side and said that was a fair review. And I think in the vast majority of times, I think most companies understand that when I'm finding issues with something, I'm not being mean. I'm being fair. I'm being honest and talking about what's good and what's bad. And I think if all anyone ever says is good things, then it's hard to believe that reviewer. And so I think you have to point out when things are bad, and that's part of what I do. And I think most companies that make good products tend to understand that better than anyone else. The companies that get really upset about something I say are the ones that are usually less confident and don't tend to make as good of products. It's really interesting to see those two things are very similar, whether or not they get upset at something versus how good their product is.
And how can you take us with you in the process of a review? So you receive, for example, a rival or a new tax. How does it work? You
Yep.
unbox and then
Yeah. And then so you just
maybe we can start with our special with the top 5,
Oh,
and then go to the bike trainers, and then maybe take us
that's
through
okay.
the process of reviewing a bike trainer, and we can talk about the bike trainers. So it's time for the top 5 cycling gadgets, according to Ray. Ray, we're going to open up your website about because every year you do a top review of the best smart trainers there are. That's the winter guide, smart trainer recommendation guide. There are not much bike trainers on sale right now because they're all out of gear.
Yeah.
Take us through the process of how you do a review of a bike trainer.
Yeah, so for a trainer review, it's actually one of the more simplistic reviews I have to do because I don't have to go anywhere. I can stay put. I don't have to get cold outside. It's great. But I'm still reviewing a trainer over multiple sessions, and usually in most cases, review a trainer over between 1 month and 2 months is kind of the norm of workouts. And I'm using a variety of applications like Zwift and Trainer Road and Full Gas and you name it, Sufferfest, etc. Trying different things out to see how well they work, and I'm trying to understand, where there are both accuracy type issues with the trainer, as well as where there may be just some sort of general usage type things to kind of look out for. So this guide here is my annual, I release every fall, kind of roundup of all the different trainers and primarily different price buckets. So I've got kind of budget trainers, but most of what I do is smart trainers. So I'm looking at things that are controlling the resistance on the trainer and making it simulate hills. So if you went up a hill in Zwift or up a hill in Full Gas, you feel that. So those are sort of the buckets that I've got there. I use US dollar pricing because that's the only stable pricing currency out there. So in Europe, your pricing here is sort of whatever the discounter wants to be. So it's really hard to match prices. In the US, that's against the rules. So the rest of the world considers that illegal, of course, but the US is a little special there. So I just keep it simple with US pricing and kind of these buckets of under $450, $450 to $700, $700 to $1,000, and then above $1,000. And for each one of those, I have recommendations, and they change year to year, just like the buckets change year to year. If we look back 5 years ago, there weren't any smart trainers under $600. So it was sort of this entire landscape has shifted. And this year is special too, because I kind of start off the entire post saying, the best smart trainer you can buy today is the smart trainer that you can buy today, right? Like there's not much out available. So you're going to have to make some compromises and see what you can find.
You have some things to consider. You start with first and foremost, it needs to be sturdy. I thought you would say first and foremost, it needs to be quiet, but then you go up in the price range, of course. But it needs to be sturdy. Why does it need to be sturdy?
2 reasons. One, you don't want to fall off. There are some trainers that may not have a very heavy base, for example, or may not have splayed out legs and can be very tipsy. So I tried. What was it? Kind of a trainer base of sorts this past, I guess a year ago now, that was really tipsy. And it was something that you wouldn't tip it over the vast majority of the time. But if you weren't paying attention for 1 second and you reached to grab something off the side, like say you have a chair next to you with a water bottle on it, and you reach to grab it while not paying attention, you were absolutely going over. And so that's one of those things where you don't think about it, and it's less of an issue, but you definitely want to at least consider it.
Okay.
So Otto Pelleboer, one of the famous Dutch Swifters, he was riding a Kicker core, I think, Bastiaan, and he was making it heavier with
on the side, big weights on the side.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's one way to do it too. I think, if you're doing some really explosive sprints, the sprints that I can't really do, but if you can throw down some really big sprints, then definitely having some weight to it can be helpful. And you can do it with sandbags. It costs like nothing. You can go to Gamma and for a year, or get a sandbag and call it done.
Oh yeah. Hey, Andre, we were talking smart trainers at the moment. I've been to Hillegom a couple of weeks ago to test the new True bike.
Yep.
I saw you measuring the True Bike on an Instagram post, but I haven't seen you test the True Bike. Have you tested yet?
Test is an interesting term. So
Tried.
I have tried.
Yeah.
I had one here for a little while, and then we had some technical issues, and eventually they can't pick it up. And I think they have emailed to try it again. So I'm going to see where that ends right now. It's definitely interesting. I think for sure it's interesting. The challenge with that, for my broader audience, is it's only really available here in the Netherlands in very small numbers. It's fascinating though. There's some aspects of that are super cool. Like I love the fact that it's Wi-Fi connected. For example, is great. Like I just sit there and like, why are all these bikes not Wi-Fi connected? It just seems like an obvious thing to me. So there's some elements that I like and some elements that I'm not necessarily convinced on. But I am looking forward to trying it again at some point here.
Yeah, well, I cannot tell anything about the accuracy or technology wise, but I can tell something about.
Why not? Why not? Is it an embargo dingetje?
No, it's not an embargo, but I don't have those tools to measure it, but I can tell something about the feeling in my legs, and that's something totally different on the True Bike compared to a with a flywheel. And that's something I really liked.
Okay.
Did you feel the same as well?
I was mixed on it. I think partly because there was one aspect that I didn't feel the acceleration was correct. It's a totally different design than every other smart bike out there. They have an entire like mechanical drivetrain. It's crazy in a lot of ways. And I was mixed on it. And I remember first trying it at Eurobike, I guess a year ago now, I think, maybe, well, I don't remember, a long time ago. And when I first, like the first two pedal strokes, I said, something is different here, because I looked, when I made those first pedal strokes, the way it engaged and the way it responded, I'm like, this is weird. And I asked the guys, and I said, and I don't remember the exact part of the conversation. I said, but this feels very different in the way it engaged those first 2 seconds. And they said,
true.
We're the first people to notice the nuance of that. And once you got beyond that first 2 seconds, then it felt, I thought, much better. But those first like 2 seconds, it was like, this feels a little weird. And that was probably an acceleration. But I want to try it again. I know it's been, I think, almost a year since I tried it, after they had some technical challenges that they came and picked it up and stuff. So there's a lot that I like, honestly. Yeah, you got it pulled up there. I think the Wi-Fi aspect of it is brilliant. I like the fact that it has its own little battery and stuff. The screen, I'm kind of mixed on as well. For me, I think I'd like to see a little bit bigger screen on it if you're going to do the screen there. Otherwise, I found it like moving it around here, it just sort of got in the way. But that's something I know that they've talked about, different options there. That's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things. But it's fascinating. I like seeing. It's cool because this is a company that, in the grand scheme of smart bikes, is kind of a nobody, right? So to be able to create this product out of it that is relatively competitive in this market is pretty cool.
Yeah, and in the same price range, for example, as a Wahoo Kicker bike.
Yep.
So well, I've got the same with the screen. It's maybe small, and when using Zwift, I don't think you're going to look at that screen. You look at Zwift. So but I got the same as like you told me with the first two pedal strokes is like the engine is doing weird things. And then when you're pedaling, it's okay. I got the same. It's weird.
Yep.
I got one question.
Yeah.
Is it sturdy?
Oh, that thing's not going anywhere. That is a beast. So it's like pedaling a car. It's huge. It's just so heavy.
It's steel on the frame. So
okay. So let's get back to the other trainers. I have to bring back our. I have to switch between all sorts of. Yep. Here it is. Oh yeah, that's your bigger screen.
Yep.
So can we start with the budget smart trainers? What do you recommend right now? I know there's not much on to buy. The shops are empty, but what would you recommend if you want to start with Zwift, for example?
Yeah, one of the best deals out there, period, especially in Europe. It's not as good a deal in the US, but especially in Europe, is the Tax Flow Smart. This floats here normally, again, not the last few months. Normally, it floats between like 225 euros and 250 euros from Decathlon and stuff like that. And it's a phenomenal little trainer. It's relatively accurate. If you're a bigger rider, it's not maybe as good because it can't withstand as much power. But especially in the sprints, for like normal steady state stuff, it's fine. But this is a great option. It's got full resistance control, so it can simulate hills. Again, not like 15% gradient, but
up to 7%.
7%. But the thing that people got to keep in mind there with that is if you're using Zwift in all the default configuration settings, then by default, Zwift will half all of your gradients because it's 50% trainer difficulty is default. And most people never even change that. So if you apply that math to this, that means effectively, if you were to change this, you would get like equivalent of, that same full 7% or even up to 14% if you split it in half and do what people would normally do. So I think too much attention is paid sometimes to the gradient figures on these trainers. Where that can matter, however, is in other apps. So if you have Full Gas or something else where you are doing gradients, they don't have the trainer difficulty set to halfway, or if you're the type of person that really likes to simulate climbs. So obviously living here in the Netherlands, we have approximately 0 climbs. So if you're longing for the Swiss Alps or the French Alps or some Alps, and this probably isn't the trainer for you, because when you have a trainer that's less powerful in those climbs, especially for even medium-sized to heavier riders, it won't be able to withstand that as well at lower speeds. And so the biggest thing that the larger flywheels give you and the resistance power is the ability to do slow speed at high intensity. So that's like the defining characteristic between basically a cheap trainer and a high-end trainer is how well it can control the resistance at low speed. At high speed, that's easy. But the lower the speed, the harder it is for lower-end units.
It's a trainer where I started my indoor career with.
Yep.
I started with a Tex Flow, but I had a lot of. I think I had flat tires for 3 or 4 times.
You didn't use the blue Tux tire?
Yeah, I used the blue tire, and I had a flat 4 times. Something. It's very annoying when you're in the middle of a race and you suddenly see all the wattage dropping and think, "What's happening? What's happening?" Oh no, running flat. Oh well. That happens.
It's been a long time since I've thought about flat tires on a trainer. Wow, you're right.
Okay, a mid-range. Yeah, I see a selection here with a Wahoo Kicker core.
No, that's not the core, I guess.
Snap. Yep.
Oh, Snap. The light, and this is a Drivo, the green one. What's the name?
That's the kinetic road machine. So this mid-range, almost all these options are roughly $500, 500 euros, give or take. So the Wahoo Kicker Snap, the Ceres M2, the kinetic road machine, the Elite 2.0, or the toaster as I like to call it. And then the last one there is the Elite Zumo, which the Zumo is like a little bit of a budget version of a Elite Duretto. And it's really the cheapest direct drive trainer on the market, and it's surprisingly good. I think it's one of those ones they probably made it better than they expected to in terms of accuracy and specs and all that kind of stuff. And I think, in some ways it's probably undercutting some of their higher end sales because it's so good. The challenge, though, it's actually really difficult to find. Even before COVID, there are very few distributors and retailers that will carry that product because the margins are lower. So it's challenging to find, but if you could find one, it's a great option. So in this category, most of these are incredibly similar spec-wise and feel. There's just some minor nuances to them that you kind of got to look at.
Okay. Oh well, let's move to the mid-end range, mid-high end. We see the Kicker Core, Tax Flux, and the Elite Duretto, I think it is.
That's the Sweeto there. Yeah, very similar though. So these are your best bang for the buck. These are where you're going to get equivalent performance in some cases to some of the higher end ones. Not quite the exact same, but usually pretty similar accuracy. And I think the Kicker Core is sort of the winner in this bucket, where when you look at the Kicker Core, that is really just a 2017 Kicker that's been put on different legs. That's it. So people were really happy with the Wahoo Kicker all the way up to 2017. They're like, this is the best trainer out there. And Wahoo said, sure, no problem. We'll make that the Kicker Core. We'll give it some different legs. And then in 2018, we'll call it something different. But that's what that is. That's a 2017 Kicker that, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people out there already have and love. So that's a fantastic deal. And it's silent. So it's even better than a 2017 Kicker because it's actually silent. The Elite Sweeto and the Tax Flux S is what the other one is there, are both good trainers. I think they both struggle, though, a bit compared to the Core at that same rough price point.
Yeah, when the Flux came out, not everybody was very pleased about it. I can remember a review by Shane Miller, GP Llama, and
the Flux has had a rough life. They finally stabilized it, but not all of them. So he had a lot of problems on the initial Flux, and then they revamped a lot of the hardware that became the Flux S, and that's the Flux S has been it's a great little option there. And then they introduced the Flux 2, which I've not been happy with at all for a while, and that's one I don't recommend for initially because it was horribly inaccurate, and then they fixed the inaccuracy issues, and then I've had other issues since, and so I said, I like saying, I'm like, no, I'm done with that one. But the Flux S is a fine budget one, but again, I think at that price point, if you can make it work, the Kicker Core is really just a better option.
Yeah. Okay. Then last but not least, the high-end trainer list. Use the Tax Neo 2.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, the usual suspects. Yeah, the Wahoo Kicker with the new feet.
The Axis feet, yes.
The Axis feet,
and the Scaris. Yeah.
So these ones here, it's in a lot of ways you can't go wrong with any of these. It depends on what extra little feature you want. So in the case of the Tax Neo, my recommendation there is you could really go with any Tax Neo. Like even if you can find a Tax Neo 1, the differences there are so minor between the 1, the 2, and the 2T. The 2T gets rid of some of the slippage that can happen with really powerful sprints, but the vast majority of people don't really notice that. Even between the 2T and the 2, Tax had promised some extra features that still haven't come true yet. So, like I use the regular 2 at home. I don't use a 2T at home, and it's great. The Wahoo Kicker, that's the 2020 model, the V5 model with the new fancy feet that I don't think really do anything. So if you can find a Kicker 18, a little bit, and like the most, if you don't use a trainer mat and all these things, right? So the list of caveats is so long there, it's crazy. So whatever, it's the thing with all these trainers that you realize over time is year to year, the changes may seem minor and kind of pointless, right? So like if you have a Kicker 18, there is, in my opinion, zero reason right now to upgrade to the Kicker 2020. In fact, I'd actually say you're better off on the Kicker 18 because it's more accurate than the Kicker 2020. Wahoo still has some outstanding accuracy issues to fix on the Kicker 2020 that I wouldn't actually recommend that. And I talked about that a little bit in that section there to kind of some of the nuances of that. So that's
and
sort of case here.
Cheaper than
it's 18. Cheaper if you can find it. Yeah.
And can we discuss the port that cannot be mentioned? On the back?
the port to stick a dongle in to make another port. It's
exactly that port. What do you expect about the port?
I don't know. I don't know if they know what to expect at this point about the port. So basically, they put what is equivalent to an RJ. I don't know if I have. An RJ11 cable, telephone cable. It's technically not. It's actually something slightly similar. That's slightly different than that, but it's basically a telephone cable port that then they're going to sell an adapter, so a dongle, right, to plug into that, to then plug an Ethernet port into that. But then you can plug into your router and then get faster connectivity to maybe eliminate dropouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Up until the adapter dongle part, I was on board with it. Like I think there's definitely a need, albeit a very small need, for people to be able to plug in a trainer into a network in some bad network conditions, like maybe big group events and stuff like that. The way they went about it here, to me, just seems so cumbersome. And they don't have, and through no fault, I think, of Wahoo's, but they don't have Zwift on board yet. They don't have anyone, there's no apps to support it. The adapter doesn't even exist. Here we are 5 months after this thing was announced. So what I suspect will happen is in 2021 or 2022, whenever the next version of Kicker comes out, the excitement then will be, now that port is built into the trainer, right? And it's like, well, that's what it should have been all along. And the reason they did that, to give them their fair chance to explain themselves, is that they said the manufacturing timelines and costs were easier to get that port in there initially now. Otherwise, it would have had to delay things. Basically, from a certification standpoint, putting in a powered port versus a non-powered port, and there's a bunch of stuff behind that.
Yeah, but implementation-wise, what you should do is then connect it to your router and then select in Zwift a device, not on N+, not on Bluetooth, but on IP.
Right. That's correct. That's a theory. Yeah, and then and it wasn't so much for speed. Their thinking wasn't like to make it faster or reaction times like that. It was purely to eliminate dropouts. They said that's one of their biggest support issues, and I get it. If you're like, for me, I rarely have dropout issues, but I know that there are folks that do, and they're devastatingly bad, right? If you're one of those people that just happen to live in the wrong spot, the wrong apartment in that building, that you just have dropouts all the time, it's really, really tough. So I totally get that, but I think it's a little bit of putting the cart in front of the horse right there at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it also depends on what type of kicker you have, because the first kicker I had was a first gen kicker that had dropouts, but the later models, none of them had dropouts for me, and on the same spot in the house. So I don't know why that's not working or not, but okay. We've had the trainers, I think.
I think so. We're skipping the bikes, the trainer bikes, because they will be up at number 5. So we'll with the trainers and go to something totally different. The Varia or Varia. What's the name?
Varia Radar.
Yeah.
So the Varia Radar is one that's been around for a number of years now. I think it's like in its 3rd generation. And the Varia Radar is from Garmin, and basically it's this little thing that you attach to the back of your bicycle and detects cars that are overtaking you. And it actually came from a company called Backtracker that they purchased. That was a Kickstarter campaign out of South Africa, or maybe it's Indiegogo, but one of those two. And it's a device that, if you've never used one, it's super easy to make fun of, right? And it's one of those that you're like, oh, you don't need that, just get a mirror, or why do you? It doesn't matter. But overwhelmingly, once people start using it, they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's so great. Now, the caveat to that is that here in the Netherlands, the drivers are so darn courteous compared to everywhere else in the world towards cyclists that this is slightly less important. I don't tend to use it all the time in the summer, but I've been using it more in the winter now riding, because I've got like more hats and stuff on, so I might not be able to hear the cars behind me as well because I'm more bundled up. But it basically tells me on my Garmin, or my Wahoo, or my Stages, or my Hannah, basically all the bike computer manufacturers out there support it now. It shows me the cars approaching. So once they get within about 150 meters or so, even further in like country roads, you can get like 300 or 400 meters out. It's crazy. It'll show you on your computer that there's a car coming up. It's approaching you. And it shows how relative to you as it approaches, it gets closer and closer. And then it'll show you how many cars. So if there's 5 cars, it'll show 5 little dots. It's super cool.
And is the implementation on all bike computers the same?
Pretty much. It's a little bit different between the different manufacturers. So Wahoo does it slightly different than Garmin, but all those companies have kind of actually talked together and try to standardize it from a safety standpoint, so that it feels the same in each one. In the case of Wahoo, you can actually customize the icon. So in one of my posts, I show that you can customize it and make like little chickens, or you can make Star Wars icons, whatever you want it to be.
Cool.
You can have some fun with it. But it's, again, here in the Netherlands, both the bike infrastructure means that there's a lot of the time where you're on bike paths that are full speed, that you're not sharing the same road with cars, so it doesn't really matter.
Separated.
Separated, yep. But outside the Netherlands and outside of most of Europe, that's not as common. And having the awareness of what's going on behind you is super useful. I find it also really useful when I'm riding actually in the mountains. So when I'm descending out of the mountains, and the wind speeds are fast enough that I can't hear what's going on behind me, to be able to know a car is back there is valuable. So I can know when I want to own the road or when I want to just find a spot to let the car go.
Useful.
Is really useful. Yeah.
But does it recognize speed pedelecs, because they're on the bike paths as well? They're really fast. Oh, they do.
It'll recognize that. It'll even recognize somebody sprinting up next to you. So it's basically looking primarily at the difference in speed. So it's looking at any objects that is overtaking you, where the speed is faster than you. So, and it has different levels of warnings. So if something's coming really fast, and I think the difference is either, I think it's 50 kilometers an hour, so 30 miles an hour faster, it'll give a red warning flash if it's overtaking you that much faster than you. Again, the relative speed. So where this can scare the crap out of you is if you're next to some high-speed train tracks. So like if you're on the next to the high-speed train tracks pedaling along, and all of a sudden a train comes flying up next to you, you'll get the red flashing, and you'll get it a lot of times at the very last second, and then you'll hear the whoop of the train going by. And it can throw you for to get that 1 second warning of something red, and then this whoop of the train is kind of fun. But it catches anything from mopeds to even just another person on a bicycle going faster than you.
So don't drive next to trains, because you have lots of near-death experiences, light flashing by and stuff.
Eventually, kind of remember that you're next to the train tracks. You're like, okay, if I get the red flashing light, it's not just a crazy thing on that bike path. It's probably the train.
Okay, and what's the price? Price wise?
I think it's about 150 euros roughly. Give or take. So it kind of varies a little bit, but in that range.
Okay.
And there's different versions. There's a new version, the RTL 15, and there's the RTL 510. Honestly, just get whichever one you can find. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, cool. Nice
stuff.
Nice feature. Yeah. So next up is, we talked about it earlier, the Hammerhead Karoo. You released a review on YouTube this week. Already saw it. I'll just share it in our stream.
Is it a huge improvement comparing to the previous model?
It's funny. It is and it isn't. It is a huge improvement in hardware, but the software actually remains basically the same. And so this is essentially an Android phone under the covers, but it's optimized for cycling. And it's designed for better touchscreen and rain and cold and all that kind of stuff. And it's got all the cycling features that you'd expect, like full navigation. And it's pretty cool. They did originally the Karoo 1 many years ago, and you can see it right there briefly. It's this big clunky thing that was like the size of a cheeseburger. It was huge. And most importantly, it didn't have a beeper. It didn't have any notifications audibly. So if you were out navigating around, you would never know you missed a turn because it was totally silent. So to me, that was kind of a hard stop for a device that was dedicated to being a navigation bike computer. If you're focused on riding, you're not focused on watching the screen every last second. So they fixed that with the new version here, the Karoo 2, and that's got a beeper. It's smaller. It's very similar, like a Edge 1030 in size. You can customize all the data pages, brilliantly visible maps, very much like a smartphone. It's a pretty nice unit. The only downside right now is that they're essentially sold out until March. So that's kind of a problem, but the winter will go by kind of quick, I guess.
And I see when you're touching it, it's reacting pretty fast.
For the most part, with gloves, for the most part. It's not perfect. There are certainly some scenarios where it's not perfect, but the majority of the time it does do it well. And if not, there's still buttons on the side, so you can go ahead and use those buttons if you need to as well.
Okay, interesting.
Okay. So it's not the touchscreen of the Garmin 820 or 520. What was it?
No, the old 820. Yeah, that poor thing. The touch is a lot better on the 830 and the 1030 plus.
Definitely.
1030.
Yeah.
But not.
Oh well.
Next up, the Gopro Hero 9.
Yeah, this is important for us.
I've got the 8 myself. Is the selfie screen on the front worth the upgrade?
I think so. I think it is. It's for me, for what I do, being able to hold something out there. Though not with all the rules here around holding things while cycling, I guess. But I think it's useful. So one of the things that I actually liking though with the Hero 9 is using the GoPro. It's called the lens mod, or the Max lens mod that you can put on the front. So almost everything that you've seen lately on my channel, cycling, where I've got it chest mounted, I'm using the lens mod. And what's awesome about it is it allows me to rotate the camera 360 degrees, and it keeps it perfectly stable the entire time. Meaning I could literally turn the camera upside down and it looks to you like it's perfectly flat. Super cool. It's also great for like Instagram and things like that where you want to shoot vertical video, because you can position the camera normally, but shoot perfect vertical video all the time. And so I find it great. The stabilization on the Hero 9 is definitely better than the Hero 8, even aside from the lens mod. It's just so good. And it looks subtle in some cases, but in other cases you're like, whoa, that's next level stabilization.
Is it also in this video, Ray? What we're seeing right now?
Yep. It's the Hero 9 in the top left hand corner there, and it's so good in some of that stuff. And I think that's where it's tough to. Like you could look at something like the DJI Osmo Action that's a bit cheaper, for example, or the Insta360 1R, and the stabilization on those is really good, but it's not incredible. And that's the difference that you notice sometimes. And it's just, in the case of Insta360, there's all this extra workflow that you have to do after the fact and processing, versus the GoPro footage, I take it out and I'm done with it. I like the front screen, which DJI did introduce first, the whole front screen concept. So props to them for that, and that forced GoPro to introduce it on theirs. And I find it great for framing things, to be able to, like when I try to follow the rules in the Netherlands on not hand holding like a camera or phone, whatever the case, while I'm riding. If no other reason, then people will give me a hard time. So I use I don't know if I have any floating around here. I use a bunch of gooseneck mounts on my bike so I can snap it on there. This way I can see the framing of myself and quickly adjust it, versus having to get off the bike. So I can have it without anything ever, touching my hands. I can do it all. It's super awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever ride with clean handlebars with nothing on it?
No, I don't even. Actually, yeah, my commuter bike, my 25 kilo beast of a bike has nothing on its handlebars right now, I think. So
only a bell.
Even that's rusted, so it's real rough.
Typical Dutch.
But do you go out for a ride without testing stuff, or is it always testing stuff?
It's pretty rare, to be honest. I think in the summer, sometimes a bit more when I can. I try to get out and just enjoy riding for riding, or enjoy running for running, or whatever it may be. But it's tough. There's always so much to do, and I think there's always things I could be testing. Right, there isn't like a free time for the most part. I'd say there are rides though where I'm riding for me to ride versus riding to test something. So sometimes my wife will ask, I'm like, oh, I need to go for a ride today. It'll be like a weekend, right? And she's like, I said, I need to go for a ride. She's like, are you riding for you, or are you riding for work? And I'm like, depends. What's the right answer? And her point there is like, if you want to go out and do a ride so that you're healthy and active, she's like, I will never say no. You do you, and go out for a ride and enjoy it a couple hours, right? And I'll take care of the kids. But at the inverse, if you're out riding just for the purpose of collecting data on a Sunday morning, then no, you should be spending time with the kids and doing the things you're supposed to be doing. So there's both sides of that. There are times where I will sometimes go for the ride where it's for me, and it's for me to just go out and enjoy riding, but I'll be collecting data behind the scenes because I need that data anyways, right? But that's not the focus of the ride. It's just, if I'm going for a ride, I might as well collect this data and then, deal with it later on down the road.
Okay.
Cool.
Cycling trainer apps. Next on.
Yep. So I think, so I've got an entire guide to cycling trainer apps. It's crazy, but I think what's kind of cool about cycling trainer apps in 2020 is the explosion of those apps. And so everyone knows Zwift, of course, and most people know Trainer Road, and maybe people know Sufferfest, but beyond that, it's kind of a bit fuzzy, right? People don't really know all the names. And I think it's cool. These apps back this past spring, many cases, they increased the number of users by 3 times, 4 times, even more. Like, it's crazy numbers. And it's cool because people are seeing that there is a world beyond Zwift, right? There are other options, and there's nothing wrong with Zwift. Zwift is an incredible platform that's done incredible things, but it's also not for everyone. Not everyone wants to be in this virtual world. They may want to be, again, climbing real climbs in the Alps or whatever the case may be. And I think it's cool that there are so many options now, and so many really good options that are just getting better and better.
Can you name one that can compete with Zwift?
I think it depends on what you want, right? So I think in terms of competing with Zwift straight up, like in terms of a racing platform, that's really, really tough. I think the closest that gets to that is probably Road Grand Tours or RGT and Be Cool. Be Cool has the users there from a racing standpoint, but it tends to be more in the Spanish language that you see the most following there because they're a Spanish company. RGT has been growing in terms of getting users on the platform for races, but there's still not a ton of people day to day. Like if you went into RGT, you're not going to see 20,000 people on there like you would on Zwift. So they do some fantastic
number
stuff.
Then at the moment?
I have to see what it is today. And my guess is probably hundreds of people in a given point in time. It's been a few months since I've been on there on a daily basis, but that's where it's tough because if you're going onto a platform to be social, then Zwift is sort of the king there. But if you're going onto a platform to just ride it by yourself, like if you want to simulate an outdoor course somewhere, then something like Full Gas is incredible. It's beautifully well done. Especially their Apple TV app is so good. And the same goes for, even Tax's own app is pretty good from a beauty standpoint and how it looks, and it's really clean. And I think those are important. And then if you look at something kind of off in the field, you've got Peloton, which they don't really sell directly into the Netherlands market at this point. They've got it in Germany, I think Belgium as well, in the UK. But that is more kind of the spin class side of things. But you'd be surprised how many people get into that. And there's Tour de France riders that are Peloton instructors that will make you suffer just as much as any other structural workout out there.
Of course.
It's not all like raw singing, dancing, music stuff. It's you can go and you can hurt.
And you can connect the Peloton bike to Zwift at the moment, can't you? They just released something? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, exactly.
Sort of. Yeah, there's a third-party accessory that's just was launched on
third-party.
Okay. Yeah. So
it's not official Peloton.
No, because Peloton doesn't broadcast any of their metrics out of the bike itself, unfortunately. So I think Peloton though shows. I know, like again, in the like competitive cycling world, people like to make fun of Peloton, but there's a Tour de France rider right there, right? So you can't like argue in that sense, and he's going to make you hurt. But a Peloton from a bike standpoint, so set aside everything, the big conceptions people have around Peloton and singing, dancing workouts, and focus on the bike. And the fact that they've got something that just works every single time. Like I know if I jump on the Peloton bike, like let's say I've got to be on it at 9:30 and off it by 9 or by 10:15. I know that that'll work. I know I can jump on it and everything's going to work perfectly every single time. I can't guarantee that on my kicker connected to Zwift on a thing, connected to something else sensor-wise. Like it just doesn't always work. And I think that's partly because it's one cohesive system where they've got a screen there, a big, beautiful screen that's huge that just works. And I think that's where, Eric Min, the CEO of Zwift, has talked about their aspirations for a smart bike, to build a smart bike. And to make something that's a cohesive picture. And they understand that, and that part of Peloton's success, part of why Peloton can sell nearly 1/3 bikes every single quarter, is because it just works, right? And you compare those numbers, that 1/3 bikes, to what Tax produces or Wahoo produces or Stages, and they're doing 50 times more bikes per quarter than those companies are. That's just unbelievable numbers because it works. So
and they haven't found the Netherlands yet.
They haven't. I went and got one. People have seen my story. I rented like a kidnapper truck from here, and I went across the border to Germany back in September, and I had it delivered to a reader's house that was 1 kilometer across the border in Germany. So I ordered online, and I delivered it to his house. He happened to live 1 kilometer across the border, and I went across before things border-wise changed, and I put it in my van, my kidnapper van, and then drove it back to the Netherlands to test it out and to understand how it works. And again, I think there's a lot we can learn from Peloton, even if you don't like Peloton as a platform.
Okay. Well,
interesting.
There's a platform for everybody, because I know lots of guys who still want to ride the tax movies, because it's still the Alp or still the Van Toe, and it's not a game. It's not a game, because when you like Zwift, you're most likely you were a gamer when you were young. So and
the Mario Kart feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's other people that just want to be in front of numbers, right? Like Trainer Road, for example, is one where if you just want structured workouts, you just want to do your thing and just want to hammer out a workout, that's great. It has no fancy graphics. It just And there are days where I just want to do that. I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to think about following little people on Zwift or about climbing up. I just want to start my workout and suffer for an hour and tune out the rest of the world. And so that Trainer Road's great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, true. Oh, but like you just mentioned Peloton, I just didn't realize that they did sell so many bikes, and they were actually. I didn't know that it was their one ecosystem, just software and hardware, like Apple does. Just one thing. Good job.
It's a very closed ecosystem, and that's both good and bad. So natively, it is really challenging to use a Peloton bike with Zwift, for example. Inversely, the Peloton bike with Peloton is perfect every single time. So it's a trade-off that you always make between like the closed garden versus an open platform.
Yeah.
What does it cost?
Yeah.
So I think euros, it's 2,400 euros for the bike.
Okay.
So that's the bike, the screen as well. Everything's all included. But then you have to pay $40 a month. I'm not sure what it is in euros. I think it's the same for the subscription, which is expensive compared to Zwift. But people typically look at it going, well, Peloton is replacing me going to the gym. It's replacing me going to spin classes or something like that. And so in that context, it's super cheap. And I think even Zwift over time, I think in time we'll look at Zwift and go, wow, remember the days we only paid 15 euros a month? It's we'll see.
We always say, remember the blue guys on Zwift.
The
Ghost Riders.
The good old days,
When you're logging in and you saw 100 people online, that was awesome.
So it's funny. I was looking at an old post, my first post on Zwift from like whatever it was, 6 years ago, something like that, 7 years ago. The very first post I did when I first met them, and they were, not even like launched in beta, and I had some screenshots that it was like, 50 people or something like that in Zwift, and it's like, oh yeah, those days. Remember that?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Cool.
Cool stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so top 5 gadgets to use. Now, we talked about different trainers in different categories. The Varia Radar, a very cool device to keep you safe on the bike, to inform you about what's coming up from behind. The Hammerhead Karoo 2, the Gopro Hero 9. I'm definitely gonna order one, Bastiaan, including the lens. Yeah. And the new trainer platform. What I just remembered was, isn't it also a lot of people like tax movies, but does it have something to do with the aging population? Because the old school people do not want to go to Zwift because it's too gamey.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Where I think people want to see that realism outside. They're trying to escape maybe what's going indoors. So in that sense, Zwift can feel a little bit gamified to them, a little weird to them. Like you said, though, it's really what people prefer. There are some people that just find all aspects of Zwift. They don't want to deal with either the people or the gamification. So like there's people that have said, Zwift's roads are too busy. I don't want to see people there, right? I just want to ride alone. And that's cool too. Like whatever floats people's boats. I think it's tough to like bucketize why people want it for different things. Just like some days I want to do this and some days I want to do that. There are days where I want to be on Zwift and days where I'm like, I want nothing to do with Zwift. I just want to focus on a workout. Other days where I just want to do a Peloton workout because I want like that visual interaction of just being pressed by someone to just keep on moving forward. So it's totally different.
I can
You
imagine when you're riding on Zwift, it's raining ride-ons.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of ride-ons. I'm not even sure what to do with them. I've got so many drop points. I don't even know what to do with these drop points. I feel like I just need to I wish I could give them away or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You get an accelerator every time, like a certain number of ride-ons and stuff. So it's
Yeah, cool.
Tomorrow evening, we're riding up the Alp with Dylan van Baarle from Team Ineos. So if you want to ride with us, feel free to join us.
Feel free to join on the Alp.
And try to drop Dylan on the Alp.
a Friday night ride, right?
Yeah. We always do a social ride with HetisKoers on Friday evening. So yeah,
very cool.
Okay.
Then next up is the flop, the flop of the year, or well, can we call it like that? Don't know for sure, but you mentioned IQ too. Sorry. Yeah, and the power meter from Holland as well.
Yep.
Is not on the market yet.
No, it's tough, and I think you're kind of looking to ask what is a flop of the year, and in some ways it's tough because this has actually been a really good year in terms of good products come out. There haven't been really any truly bad products on the market this year, partly because there haven't been as many products this year, so that helps the standings there a bit. But I think so if I look at all those and go, well, there wasn't really any bad ones, I have to look at the ones that didn't deliver, and so in that case, there's only one that didn't deliver, which is HiK and their power meter, and this has been Kickstarter project for a couple of years now, and they had finally delivered a prototype, May or something like that to me, saying that this was they're ready to start production, they're ready to go, and these are the final pedals, and pedal-based power meter, left only right now, but eventually left and right. And I went out and tested them, and I broke the first pair within 15 minutes of starting my ride. I'm like, well, this is off to a bad start. So
what
I called
did
them
you
up.
break then?
They didn't really know at first, but it turns out there was a build issue inside the spindle, and basically the connectivity just died. So it just stopped producing power.
Okay.
So they were obviously very, very concerned about this, and so they came immediately and picked them up and inspected them, and then they dropped off another pair a couple of days later that they realized once they figured out what the issue was that it was just on that particular pair. And my testing was great. They were really accurate, actually, really good job, really accurate. Build quality feels nice, all is good. I'm like, okay. I didn't want to call it a review then. I said this is a first look because I only had a few rides on them, and I didn't really know where they are production-wise. And one of the things I do with my reviews is I try to wait until it's the final physical hardware and the final software, so I know that it's the real thing. And if possible, I try to wait until I know they're going to ship basically that week, sort of thing, like immediately or next week, within the next week or so. So I don't get in a situation like what happened here, which is that now we are in December, and they still haven't shipped to any number of backers, best anybody can tell. And they ran into more production issues, and it's tough because I get it. Making power meters is one of the most difficult things to do in the cycling industry, if not the most difficult thing to do. Making pedal-based ones are the hardest to do. As one famous power meter project, Brim Brothers, the founder of that, said before they finally went out of business, he said, with power meters, you can get 95% of the way there and stay there for years, because it's the last 5% that gets you. And with power meters, you can't have it drop out 2 times a ride. That's considered unacceptable. It has to be perfect every ride. And it's that last 5%, the last 2% that can take you years. In the case of Garmin Vector, it took them 3-4 years to get out of that phase. And that's super common. And so HiK basically just, they bit off more than they can chew, I think, in terms of timelines and what they thought that would be, and they've underestimated how difficult this market is to get right from a yield
maybe
standpoint.
a bit overambitious.
A little bit, yeah. So I still believe they're going to get there. I believe when they can figure it out, I mean, they've shown they can build one. They can build at least one set. And this is the other challenge with power meters, that when I've talked to the big companies out there, Garmin and Brim Brothers, that attempted one and others, is that building one of these pedals successfully is really challenging, but possible. But when you scale this to mass production, scaling pedals with spindles and electronics inside of them to mass production is where things tend to go wrong. And that's where Garmin spent years not having one that was functional, but trying to get it where they can produce 1,000 at a time and have the yield be acceptable from a manufacturing standpoint. And that is where it sounds like the manufacturing hell that HetisKoers is in right now, and combined with parts availability and all the kind of stuff that you have challenges with, both as a startup, but also because of COVID and whatnot.
But they did get a lot of money in their Kickstarter campaign, didn't they? They were very very successful.
Yep. But in the grand scheme of how much money a company like that needs to produce a power meter, they got nothing. Right. So that's the thing to keep in mind, is that, and I think people forget this on Kickstarter campaigns, is that for most Kickstarter campaigns, the money that you see going into projects these days compared to what it was 5 or 6 years ago is but a fraction of what they need to be able to make that project work. That Kickstarter these days is more about marketing than anything else. And so by now, the money that they had has been spent 10 times over on things to make this get to where they are.
Okay. I really hope they get there and produce a good product. Also,
I do too. I'm optimistic. I think, I know a lot of people, rightly so, are, concerned about fraud and all these sort of things. And the company behind HetisKoers has started working on electric car chargers and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. So some of that is not a good look at all. But I think, technically speaking, I'm still optimistic they can get there. I think they have what they need to do. I'm not convinced as a company they understand how to communicate in this age as well as they should, though.
Yeah. Okay. HetisKoers, go for it. You can do it.
we are also looking forward to the new Speedplay pedals, of course, which was acquired by Wahoo. So
see what happens there.
Yeah, exactly. With one reason, of course, to get a power meter in there. Curious what will happen.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's only one reason why they would buy a Speedplay. Technically, there's two reasons. The second reason is that the founder likes Speedplay pedals, the founder of Wahoo, and got frustrated at how bad the Speedplay pedals website was, and decided to simply buy the company instead. And I'm not kidding. That's literally one of the core reasons why this happened.
Nice.
The second reason is obvious. It's a technology company that wants to expand their cycling technology offerings, and I think they will eventually do that.
Yeah, I always thought they would be bought by SRAM to have their own pedals as well.
Yep, I think they're part of going back to the reason why Chip, founder Wahoo, bought Speedplay was the website and whatnot, and that website was in turn. Speedplay is it was effectively a mom and pop company, small company. They had a bunch of employees, but it was mom and pop at the helm there. And those two individuals were known throughout the industry of being excruciatingly difficult to work with. Very, very difficult. And that's why Speedplay popularity decreased, is because bike retailers and companies really struggled to work with Speedplay as an entity because of these two people. And so I think going down the road, that'll change a bit, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Okay. Yeah. That's wait to see. Okay, let's go on to our last part, the predictions for 2021. And this is not about the coronavirus, but about tech.
Gadget, cycling, and other stuff. Yeah. You told us something about bike computers. You suspect a strong year for the new lineup. Do you think new brands, or do you think new models?
I think new models. I think new brands. It's going to get tougher and tougher for new brands to enter this market, just like it is for wearables. Essentially the bigger players get bigger and stronger, and this isn't 5 years ago where someone can enter in like a Hammerhead. I think if a Hammerhead tried to enter in now, it'd be almost impossibly difficult. They had to spend basically the last 3 to 4 years being, on the bottom of the totem pole to be able to get their software to the point where they are now. So I think going into next year, a lot of computers. If we look at typical 2-year refresh cycles, that would mean Wahoo is due for, and perhaps even overdue for a refresh. Garmin would be due for a refresh on their 530 and 830 lineup. Whether or not Garmin needs to refresh their bike computers, probably debatable. Probably not, but that's what keeps them on top, right? Is that they keep on like releasing new models. Just when someone else starts to catch up, they're like, no, we're going to take care of this and throw out something new. And then I think you've got Hammerhead, which has just released the hardware, but won't really start shipping it in volume until this March. But now can spend all of 2021 focused on software, focused purely on how many new features, how many things can they build into that. And to me, that'll be exciting. So I'm looking for like a strong year on bike computers, and I think even other players like Lesign, that kind of at the budget end,
Sigma
could see a refresh. It's been 3 years for them, so could be a good year.
Also looking forward to the other Dutch company from Arnhem, Absolute Cycling, with their artificial intelligence calculating where you are on the road.
Yep.
They also had a Kickstarter campaign, of course. So wondering what they will come up to.
Exactly. There's a lot of ones that are in that realm of kind of smaller players that sort of have launch campaigns that may not delivered yet. And it'll be interesting to see those progress. I think in a lot of the cases, those smaller companies, they have to like have that Gen 1 device, get it out there. And then they have this year-long slog of a period afterwards where they deal with growing up, right? They deal with figuring out all the bugs they have to deal with and all that kind of stuff that just takes a while. And then you see them start to mature. Similar to what we saw with Hammerhead of this. You've got to ship this initial product, suffer for a year or two, and then get to the point. If you survive that, then you can start playing ball.
What kind of improvements would you like to see on the new GPS?
I think I want to see kind of speed improvements for one. So on the Garmin side, I'd like to see speed. I like to just see better integration between Garmin's bike computers and their phones. I think Wahoo sort of sets the bar for integration there on how to configure a Wahoo Roam or Element or whatever the case is in terms of setting data fields. It's got to be easier, got to be a little cleaner. I'd love to see more innovation in the Strava realm with integration of those things. Like I think there's so much you could do with Strava Live segments, and Hammerhead does some of this, where they show you in a much better display your competitors and where they are relative to you on a little map as you're going in real time, overlaid on elevation. Like it's really well done. I think there's cool stuff that can be done in that realm, just integrating into those cloud platforms a bit better.
Okay. More Strava integrations. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah. And I think even like speaking of platforms, like I would love to see all these bike computers integrate cleanly into Zwift. And so I showed this a little bit in my Hammerhead post where I can run the Zwift companion app on a Hammerhead computer, which that computer is not designed for that per se, but you think about you have your bike computer on your handlebars. Why can't I leverage that for some of those Zwift companion type apps or type functions as well? Like that's the kind of stuff where there's a lot of cool potential there that could be done in a waterproof form factor. So when you're pouring sweat inside, it's not on your phone. It's just on something designed for sweat and rain and all that.
So you were able to install the Zwift app on your Hammerhead.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I ran it there, and it's not like a great experience, but it's not optimized for it. And so I think there's potential to optimize that.
Is it supported? Is it legal?
Yeah, technically, it's an Android app. So it's an Android app.
Hack or bot?
No, it works, right? So
of course. But I was thinking, is anybody able to do it when you own a Hammerhead to get the app on the computer?
You have what's called sideload. So there's no Google Play Store on the Hammerhead, so you can't just like tap it. But you can sideload it pretty easy if you're slightly technical. But that's Hammerhead's goal, is to get apps on board, and it sounds like they have some apps that are lined up for early next year to do that sort of thing. It'll be completely easy to do and just click and install sort of thing. So that is where there's potential there to use that beautiful phone of a display to do something more than what we're used to with like monochrome type displays.
Interesting stuff.
Okay.
And I also like to see some battery life extending, but That's something. Don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think the companies are going to leverage the extra battery capacity more for features, right? This kind of balance of bigger battery and then burn it with features, which is tough blend.
Tough one, yeah, true.
Okay.
Then go on to the Zwift Bike. They have launched their own hardware department, of course.
Yep.
Do you know if some guy from Tex or Wahoo or other elite companies joined Zwift?
None of the big names. So that's sort of the thing I look for, and certainly there are other engineers in the world.
Of course, yeah.
I'm waiting for Zwift to throw enough money in front of the face of one of the top engineers at one of these companies, and I email all those top engineers on a regular basis, and I know that the top bike and trainer engineers at Tax are still there, the top ones at Elite are still there, the top ones at Wahoo are still there, and same with Watt Bike. And so, given all those guys are still there, that doesn't help. And I know, like in case of Zwift, they pulled over one of the top engineers from Specialized to work there, and that's great. That'll definitely help. And he's a very, very smart engineer, and it's great. But he hasn't done bike trainers in smart bikes. And as Wahoo, or as Murray from Wahoo Fitness said, who's one of the top engineers there, there is a very long learning curve to this industry. And it takes a long time to understand the nuance of it. And I think that's what Zwift is underestimating here. And don't get me wrong, Zwift will absolutely eventually build a smart bike, and it eventually will probably be very, very good. But I think they're vastly underestimating how long it's going to take to get there. And we've seen that where Zwift has been asking around trying to get manufacturing capacity for 2021, and they're really struggling to get that manufacturing capacity because, it's hard to make a smart bike. The smart bikes that you see right there are the most complicated things that are made in the cycling industry today, period. They're incredibly difficult.
Yeah, we see the Watt bike, the
Watt Bike Atom,
Bike Atom, the Wahoo Kicker bike and the Tax bike. So, did they prove themselves to you? Is it? Would you recommend buying one, or?
I would say, like, if you've got a yacht or a private airplane or something like that, where you have that kind of money that you're like, I can throw this, I can buy this, no big deal, and go for it. If you're like, if you look at the price of the Wahoo Kicker bike, which I think is $3,500, I'm not sure in euros, 3,500 euros, I think the same there as well. And if you look at that price and you go, oh, that hurts, then I would probably wait. I think all these bikes are Gen 1 bikes. They're really good first attempts, and the Wahoo Kicker bike is a great first attempt at a bike. But we all know that in another year, maybe even less, there'll be a new bike, and it'll fix some of the core issues with that existing bike. So if it was me, if I was spending my own money, I would wait. I would wait and see what happens next year. Because at that point, I think Zwift will probably announce, my bet is Zwift will announce their bike at Eurobike next summer, probably. I know they want to do it much sooner than that, but they'll probably announce it at Eurobike, and then it'll probably start shipping roughly a year from now, is my guess, in the best case scenario. And again, they may announce it sooner just to mess with us, but I just don't see them having any chance in the world of delivering any number of smart bikes in quantity before Christmas of next year. It's just incredibly difficult to be able to pull that off. So given that, I think their competitors will take that opportunity to ramp up manufacturing. I mean, Wahoo is still supply chain limited on manufacturing kicker bikes. Like, these bikes are still hard to get because they're so difficult to manufacture. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for Zwift.
All cycling related stuff is at the moment almost unable to get at the shops. It's all sold out. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And in the case of Zwift, we know them. Eric has been very clear, Eric, the CEO of Zwift, that they want to make a bike better than what it's out there today. And so that means in the job postings was shown about using pneumatics in them to go up and down and that kind of stuff. So that means that they've got to do all the really challenging engineering of the kicker bike. which took years to do. And then they want to add on top of that. And my guess is they're probably going to have a screen built into it, like a Peloton bike, because again, that's the whole cohesive environment. So each one of those things is a layer that you have to do something new that you've never done before. And I've talked about this in some other contexts where, each project that you have can have like one Hail Mary on it, right? One thing that you as a company have never done or the industry has never done before. And you can generally get away with that for a new project. But when you've got like 5 Hail Marys or 10 Hail Marys, that's really tough. That's where,
good luck.
I think an HetisKoers is a perfect example of that, where HetisKoers went to the market saying, we're going to do this all in 6 months. We're going to make a pedal that nobody's ever made before, or pedal pod in that original case. We're going to do this and this and this. And they had like 5 Hail Marys. They had 5 things that no one in the industry had ever done before. And here's a company with no experience trying to do 5 things that no one else could do. And we saw how that turned out.
That's hard.
If you had a meeting with Eric Min, what would you advise him to implement in the Zwift bike?
I would advise him to be a Peloton bike. And I would actually, hold on 1 second because my power is about to die. Let me plug this in. Hold on.
Is it that late already, Bastiaan?
Yeah. 10 for 10.
Plug in. Okay, good. Got juice. It was flashing critical. I didn't want to at that critical moment to die. Okay. So
just in time.
Just in time.
Yeah. I would advise him to try to buy someone out. Be my recommendation. Meaning
a company or an engineer?
A company. Definitely an engineer. I think he should have done that already. I mean, it's not hard. No offense to those top engineers, but Zwift just closed a $500 million round, right? Zwift could sit here and one of their cheapest paths forward would be to offer $1 million to each one of those engineers from Tax and Wahoo and Elite and Watt Bike. You could offer $1 million to each one of them and go, here, I want all 4 of you over here. If I was in part of Zwift, that's what I would do. Now, is that a good thing for the industry? No, of course not. Is it a good thing for consumers? Definitely not. But
it's good for Zwift.
If I was running a business, again, as a business, you've got to hire the right people. And that is a much cheaper maneuver than spinning your wheels for forever, how long that's going to be.
Interesting.
I think that sums it up, Bastiaan. I think we had we talked about everything we want to talk about. So are there any last requests, Bastiaan?
No, not for me. I think Ray has told us a lot of information, useful information. Is there something you would like to share with us, Ray? Other stuff we missed?
I think we covered a lot. We covered a lot of good stuff, and it's always fun chatting with folks. And I appreciate the time for you guys to bring me on here. And I enjoy chatting cycling. I also enjoy chatting cycling with people that are here as well. I think, like I said at the beginning, I'm loving my time here, like every day, even on really cold and miserable days like this morning, pedaling in and stuff. Like the fact that I get to bike easily, safely, and everything else every single day is it's awesome. I know something that maybe you guys take for granted, but for me, the fact that I can commute every day by bicycle around the city all day long and not feel unsafe is something that's really, really rare in this world, unfortunately.
Yeah, and not even owning a car is weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep it that way. Keep it that way.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay. Ray, thank you for your time, and I hope we hope you will come back at the end of 2021 to review the coming year as well.
Yeah.
So,
sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Many thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Ja, Bastiaan.
Ja.
Kun je nog in het Nederlands denken, of zit je ook de hele tijd zoeken naar woorden?
Nee, nu gaat het wel weer. Ik klets makkelijker met jou in het Nederlands dan
Toch.
Ja. HetisKoers was voor mij van een lastige.
Nou, ik zag het. Ik denk, daar gaat hij. Ja. Het is toch leuk om het zo te doen, hè?
Ja, absoluut. Het ging hartstikke goed. We hebben een mooie show, informatieve avond. Zo hoor. Het is echt niet mis. Ja.
Precies. Nou, dan hebben wij denk ik ook niks meer. Zijn we er doorheen?
Nee, ja, kijk, we hebben deze opgenomen, dus dit slingeren we TCT online. Het idee is tussen kerst en oud en nieuw, toch?
Ja, zeker.
Ja,
Nou,
donkere dagen tussen kerst en oud en nieuw of zo.
Nou, dan hoop ik dat, mocht je dit nu kijken, dat je dan denkt van, de kerst was sober en we waren met niet te veel mensen samen en we gaan met oud en nieuw ook nog eventjes zo houden. Hè?
Ja.
Dat we het met z'n allen lekker veilig houden. Dus,
en dan eventjes like, share en abonneer, toch?
Juist, ja, precies. Dat is
dat is het beste.
En deel het. Ik bedoel,
deel het, ja,
het Zwift of het HetisKoers virus mag je altijd verspreiden, zou ik zeggen. Dus like, deel en abonneer. Nou, dan gaan we het hierbij afsluiten, Bastiaan.
Ja, super.
Het was een bewogen jaar.
Mooi jaar.
Een mooi jaar. Wij hebben nieuwe dingen gedaan. We zijn begonnen met HetisKoers TV. Wie weet wat ons nog allemaal te wachten staat. Maar wij gaan 2021 gewoon weer door. En dan wensen wij iedereen een heel goed uiteinde alvast. En
een goed uiteinde.
Spoedig en sportief 2021. En we hopen jullie weer terug te zien hier.
We kunnen gewoon zeggen tot volgend jaar.
Tot volgend jaar.
Ja,
en dan
hebben we... Tot de volgende, maar tot de volgend jaar.
Tot volgend jaar. Oké, Bastiaan. De groeten.
De groeten.
Tot de volgende. Hoi.
Tot de volgende.
Bedankt voor het kijken en tot de volgende keer.